Assalamu alaikum viewers and welcome back to Prime Live. We are so privileged to be once again joined by Alie Komape from Africa for Palestine. Now I know you all might have seen the news broadcasted everywhere that there has been a ceasefire agreement reached in Gaza. But what does that actually mean? Join us in on our conversation today to unpack the ceasefire and what it might mean. Assalamu alaikum Alie. Thank you so much for joining us once again on Prime Live.
Walaikum salam, and thank you for having us.
I mean, it's a privilege to have you back in studio with us, and this is such an important conversation. I know hearing the word ceasefire is something we've all been looking forward to and something that we feel is long overdue after the hardship that the Palestinian people have faced over the many deaths that have been caused by the ongoing genocide. But a lot of us are wondering, how long is the ceasefire going to last? And I think I want to start off our conversation by asking you, what is Africa for Palestine's response when it comes to the deal that has been reached after the 15-month-long genocide that has been inflicted? But we know this has been an ongoing genocide for decades. But when it comes to the date of October 7th, what is your thoughts?
Look, it's regrettable that it had to take 15 months for us to reach this stage. It's regrettable that over 46,000 Palestinians are dead and hundreds of thousands of others unaccounted for, probably under the rubble or not being located in the genocide. It's really, really regrettable. But seeing the footage, seeing the images coming out of Gaza of Palestinians celebrating the ceasefire, of Palestinians celebrating that they can go back to their homes, is really comforting. This is to show that Palestinians love life. Palestinians want to live. The idea that Palestinians are terrorists, they are suicide bombers, or whatever the case is not true. They love to live. They love life. And as Africa or Palestine, we join Palestinians and of course the rest of the world, billions across the world who welcome this ceasefire, who smile at the jubilation of Palestinians in Gaza to this ceasefire.
Absolutely. I think we all breathed a huge sigh of relief when we found out the news about the ceasefire, but a little too late. Like you said, there are thousands of Palestinians who have lost their lives already since the attacks have started since October 7th, and we're not forgetting the countless number of lives who have been lost since this genocide was inflicted on Palestine decades ago. But we want to also talk a bit more about that particular ceasefire. Now, Africa for Palestine have called the deal a temporary pause in the genocide. We know that this doesn't mean the end of the occupation. This is just a ceasefire. So the liberation struggle, of course, must continue. But are you concerned that Israel will violate the ceasefire agreement anytime soon? What are the concerns?
I mean, when has Israel not violated a ceasefire? That's what they do. I mean, just recently, when the United States struck a ceasefire deal between the Lebanese resistance movement in Lebanon and Israel, what happened? They violated the ceasefire. On countless occasions, whenever they bomb Gaza, a fun fact, not even a fun fact, a fact, Israel bombs Gaza every year. Every year. Every calendar year, Israel bombs Gaza. So whenever there's a ceasefire agreement or a ceasefire deal brokered by either the Palestinians, a mediator, the United, whoever the case may be, they violate it. So we characterize this as a pause in the genocide because history is the best teacher. We know what Israel did, and of recent we know what they did in Lebanon. So as much as we are relieved that Palestinians, the bombs have stopped falling on innocent Palestinians in Gaza, we are wary of the fact that Israel is going to continue the bombing. In fact, Netanyahu said when he was interviewed by one of the international media that this ceasefire does not mean Israel must stop bombing Gaza. You see the craziness there. He says a ceasefire does not mean they must stop killing Palestinians. No. They want to continue killing Palestinians. So we see it as a pause. In the broader scale of things, the genocide of Palestinians has been happening for decades, as you rightly say. So this is a pause of the genocide in Gaza. The ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestinians is still continuing right now in the historic lands of Palestine.
And I think that's a very fair analysis in the way you've put things. And like you said, historically looking at the way Israel has behaved over the decades they've had occupation over Palestine, it's not difficult to assume that they will soon violate the ceasefire as well. What we have been seeing a lot on social media platforms is that a lot of people are looking at the ceasefire as a defeat almost of Israelis. And I do want to get your thoughts on these kind of comments that have been coming out, that they didn't actually achieve their military goals with what they intended to do from October 7th. And this might be some kind of humiliation of the Israelis. Do you agree with this statement? Why or why not?
Look, this is a correct analysis. Hamas, when they released their statement, they said this is a victory for the resistance, for those who were martyred in the fight against the Israeli colonization of Palestine. Look, when the war started after the October 7th military campaign, almost a month after that, almost a month after the Israeli offensive in Gaza, the Palestinian leadership and other international mediators started talking about a ceasefire. This is a month after. So a year later, right? A year later, after the Palestinian leadership have asked for a ceasefire, after dozens of ceasefire resolutions in the United Nations Security Council have been vetoed by the United States, after countless of United Nations General Assembly resolutions calling for a ceasefire, after the International Court of Justice ruling calling for a ceasefire, and countless other international bodies and international humanitarian organizations calling for a ceasefire, Israel has accepted one. So it's been a Palestinian call for a ceasefire. It's not an engineering of the Israelis. It's not an engineering of the United States. It's the engineering of Palestinians who said a month, said, no, we're tired of seeing blood. We're tired of seeing our people die. A year later, the Israelis and the United States want to tell us that this is a victory for them. No, this is a victory for Palestinians. In fact, Israeli military personnel and military personnel of Israel partners in the United States and in Europe have come out several times and said this war is unsustainable on Israel's part. Just like the Vietnam War, right? This seems to be an unending war without any particular goals being reached. You have an oppressor on one side whose goal we think really and we believe is to kill as many Palestinians as humanly possible. Then on the other side, you have Palestinians with an courageous will to live and to fight for their homeland, right? Without no weapons, without no military, no navy, nothing, no air force, nothing. They are fighting on their feet day in and day out against this oppressor. They've been fighting them for over 7 decades without any victory on the oppressor side, right? So the oppressed people will to fight, always overtrumps the oppressor's will to oppress. So in this particular instance, Israel's goals have not been reached. In fact, at one point in this war, they were on the brink of a full-scale regional war, right? And Israeli military personnel on the other side said, no, this is not sustainable. We cannot continue like this on Netanyahu's side. So this is not necessarily a victory on the side of Palestinians, but this is a setback on the part of the Israelis. This is 2 steps forward on the side of the Palestinians.
A step in the right direction, so to say. I think we all recall the images of aid vehicles and aid trucks struggling to get into the borders of Gaza, providing much needed aid and security for the people of Gaza, actually struggling to get to them. And now that the ceasefire has been reached, I recall seeing a lot of videos and images of those aid trucks making their way into the camps to assist the Palestinian people who have been so devastated by the genocide being inflicted upon them. But let's talk a little bit about accountability when it comes to the lives that have been taken, the homes that have been lost, and the absolute destruction on the people of Gaza. Now, we know we've reached a ceasefire, and I look back to the statement released by Africa for Palestine in saying that the ceasefire deal was reached, but you also make an important point that nobody must be left off the hook for the war crimes that have been committed during this genocide. Can you please elaborate on that for us?
Look, we are in agreement with the South African government that one of the goals going to the International Court of Justice was to, number one, get a ceasefire, bring an end to the atrocities, bring an end to the genocide in Gaza, and then the step further to prosecute the genocide, that's prosecute those perpetrating the genocide in Gaza. So there's still a genocide continuing, and those who are guilty of it must be prosecuted to the full might of the law. So this ceasefire is only one of the things that we were looking for as a government, we were looking for as a country, we were looking for as normal citizens of the global community. So just like the International Criminal Court has ruled, has issued a warrant for Galand, the war criminal Galand, the war criminal Netanyahu, they must be sought after. They must be prosecuted to the full might of the law. In fact, we know for a fact that Netanyahu's political career, political life, dependent on the war. Right? When the war stops, the Israeli community and the Israeli people will want accountability for the continuation of the bloodshed in Gaza, what led to the October 7th military campaign by Hamas. They want to keep them accountable. In fact, even before the war started, there were massive protests inside Israel against Netanyahu, and he knows it. So he must be held accountable. And we are happy that even the Israelis themselves will, at this point, offer him to the International Criminal Court and say, well, here he is, we don't want him anymore. Also with his cronies, with his war criminal cronies. So they must be held accountable. The South African government said, we are continuing with sorting after of the Israeli government officials responsible for the genocide in Gaza at the International Court of Justice. So that, to hold them accountable, continues regardless of what has happened of recent.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I can't help but think about the Palestinian people who are now returning to their homes, like you said, but their homes are absolutely destroyed. Towns and cities are absolutely destroyed and shattered to just rubble. How do Palestinian families, how do the Palestinians even begin to rebuild? And in closing as well, if you could share with us, when it comes to the liberation struggle, of course it still continues because the occupation, the illegal occupation of Palestine still continues. What would your message be to anyone out there in terms of how the liberation should move forward now that we have a ceasefire in place?
The United Nations has released a report that over 92% of Palestinian residential homes have been destroyed. Over 92% of the 2 million residents of Gaza will go home to destroyed buildings or to no homes at all. So this is quite horrific just to think of. The images and the footages coming out of Gaza of just complete rubble is heartbreaking, it's heart-wrenching. So they've got no homes to go back to. But it's amazing how Palestinians, like I said, will to live pans out. It's just amazing. They will rebuild. They always do. There's a popular saying, you can't keep a good man down. You can't keep Palestinians down. They will rebuild. They will rebuild their homes. They will rebuild their hopes to live. They will rebuild their resistance against the Israeli occupation, apartheid, and oppression. And as far as the liberation discourse is, the resistance movements, including Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and others, they have never said they are going to stop. They should not stop. Our message to them is continue the just fight for freedom. They will not stop until the apartheid regime is disseminated, and we are aware of it. We encourage them to continue. We encourage them to fight more, and knowing from our own history, we know that history is certain.
Absolutely. I think that's very, very well said. And that is something that all of us has taken so much of inspiration and so much of hope from, is that despite the struggle, despite the despair, despite the destruction the Palestinian people have always overcome. They always approach every situation with such hope, positivity, and faith. And we can absolutely take so much inspiration from that and continue on the fight for freedom for Palestine. But Alie Komape, thank you so much for joining us once again on Prime Live. Thank you for sharing your insight and information with us when it comes to the recent ceasefire agreement. And thank you for also reminding us that the liberation absolutely continues.
Thank you for having us. Jazakallah very much.
Viewers at home, that was Alie Komape from Africa for Palestine. He shared a lot of incredible insight when it comes to the recent ceasefire agreement that was reached. But something he highlighted that was incredibly important is that the struggle for liberation absolutely continues on. But on that note, it is time for us to head over to an ad break, and we'll come right back.